The sun had barely begun to rise over Japan when the message finally came through. After years of fire, steel, and blood, the war was over. For the pilots of the United States Navy, it should have been the safest flight of their lives. Instead, it became the last dogfight of World War II. It was the morning of August 15th, 1945. Far out over the Pacific, the American carrier force waited in tense silence. Only hours earlier, everyone had known the end was close. Japan was broken. Its cities were burning. Its navy had been shattered. Its skies were almost empty. But until the order was official, men still climbed into cockpits, still armed their guns, still prepared to kill. On the deck of an American carrier, 6 Hellcats rolled forward one by one. Their leader was a combat veteran, a hard-eyed pilot who had survived enough missions to know that the final hours of a war could still be deadly. His orders were simple.
Your mission, strike any military target still resisting in the Tokyo area and return. That's it.
Nothing about it sounded unusual. That was the lie. The engines roared. The Hellcats lifted from the deck and clawed into the pale morning sky. Beneath them, the ocean stretched out like hammered steel. Ahead lay the Japanese homeland, the place that had once seemed impossibly far away, now finally cornered. Inside the cockpits, the mood was cautious but electric. Everyone could feel it. This was the end. One more mission, maybe the last one, then home. The formation pressed inland. Soon the coastline came into view, dark against the morning haze. Rail lines, roads, airfields, scars of war in every direction. The squadron leader spotted their target ahead, a Japanese airfield near Tokyo. He keyed the radio.
Target in sight. Arm rockets.
Switch clicked. Weapons went live. Hellcats dipped their noses and began to descend. The airfield grew larger in the windscreen. Closer, finger over the firing button. Then the radio exploded.
Return to base immediately.
Return to base immediately. The war is over. For a second, nobody answered. Then the frequency came alive with cheers. Pilots shouted over each other, laughing, cursing, screaming in relief.
We got Hell yes, barrel this! Waggling wings like a maniac! Best feeling ever! We're alive!
It was over. They had made it. The squadron wheeled away from the target and turned back toward the sea. That was when the Japanese fighters came down on them, high above, almost hidden by the sun. A formation of enemy aircraft had been watching the Americans celebrate. Their own radios had also delivered the news. Cease fighting. Return to base. Obey the Emperor. Some of the Japanese pilots did exactly that. They banked away. For them, the war had ended in humiliation. But it had ended. Others could not accept it. Among them was a veteran fighter leader, a man who had lost friends, blood, and pieces of himself in the long war against America. He had seen his homeland bond. He had seen retreat after retreat, loss after loss. Now, he was being told to stop, not in victory, not in honorable death, but in surrender. Below him, American fighters were celebrating. To him, it looked unbearable. His jaw tightened. His hands closed around the controls. Then he shoved the nose down. His formation followed. The attack was perfect. The Japanese came diving out of the sun with height, speed, and surprise. One of the American pilots looked back just in time to see them. Bandits! 6 o'clock high, diving. Celebration vanished. Instantly, the American leader snapped back into combat.
Drop tanks and rockets! Brake hard! They're attacking!
External tanks tumbled away. Rockets fell uselessly. Engines roared at full power as the Hellcats yanked around to meet the threat. There was no time to think about ceasefires or surrender broadcasts now. The enemy was committed, and once guns started firing, history no longer mattered. Only survival did. The two formations slammed toward each other. The Japanese fighters carried powerful cannon. The Hellcats carried 6 heavy machine guns each and were built like flying fists. One side had surprise, the other had toughness. At closing speed, the sky turned murderous in a heartbeat. Muzzles flashed. Tracers ripped through the morning air. Aircraft crossed so close that men saw each other's faces for the briefest instant before flashing past. Then the meat formation shattered into chaos. Pairs split away. Fighters rolled and climbed in every direction. A clean sky became a spinning maze of smoke, sunlight, and gunfire. The American leader hauled his Hellcat into a climbing turn as a Japanese fighter locked onto him. He could hear rounds tearing through the air nearby. His aircraft shuddered under the strain as he bled speed, forcing the enemy to choose: overshoot or climb after him. The Japanese pilot chose to climb. That was the mistake. The Hellcat pilot pulled harder, muscles straining, vision narrowing. His aircraft trembled at the edge of a stall. For one sickening second, he hung almost helpless in the sky. The enemy guns close enough to kill him. Then the Japanese fighter slid forward beneath him. Too fast, too committed. The Hellcat rolled over the top. Now the enemy filled his gun sight. He fired. 6 Brownings hammered at once. The stream of bullets smashed into the Japanese plane. Panels flew off. Fuel ignited. Flame burst from the fuselage, and the fighter rolled away, trailing black smoke before dropping toward the earth. One down. No time to breathe. A panicked voice cracked over the radio. "Can't shake him." The squadron leader looked down and saw his young wingman twisting through the sky with an enemy fighter glued to his tail. The Japanese pilot was patient, firing in short bursts, walking cannon shells closer with every second. The leader shoved his nose down. The dive was brutal. Airspeed climbed. The target swirled in his windscreen. He fired from above and behind. The Japanese fighter disintegrated under the impact. The wingman survived by seconds.
Stay sharp. This isn't over.
"Thanks, boss. Stay sharp," came the reply. This isn't over. He was right. Across the sky, the fight had broken into separate duels. Another pair of Americans met 3 incoming Japanese fighters head-on. One American opened fire first and ripped apart the lead enemy aircraft. It rolled away, trailing pieces of wing. A second Japanese fighter flashed past, missed with its burst, and was caught a moment later by return fire that shredded its nose. The third pressed in hard, only to be cut down by the other American pilot waiting for the pass. Elsewhere, things were going badly. Another Hellcat pair was under crushing attack from a fast-climbing interceptor. Cannon shells slammed into one American aircraft again and again. The plane burst into flames and fell away. Its wingman tried to escape, but his own fighter was torn open by gunfire. Warning lights flashed. Oil streaked across the canopy. The engine began to die. He fought the controls desperately, trying to hold altitude, but the aircraft was finished. The order came through the radio: bail out. The pilot threw back the canopy and jumped. His parachute opened just above the sea. For an instant, he had survived. But the battle was still raging overhead, and no one could stop to save him. Clouds swallowed parts of the fight. Pilots lost each other and found each other again in flashes. Some escaped toward the coast. Others chased too far and paid for it. Fuel was running down. Ammo belts were growing thin. Every second the Americans stayed inland increased the danger. The squadron leader gathered what remained of his group and turned for home. That should have ended it. But the Japanese leader was not finished. He had survived the first clash. He had watched his country surrender. He had watched comrades die. And now, seeing the Americans trying to leave alive, he attacked one last time. He came down like a hawk. The American leader never had a full chance to evade. Cannon fire smashed into his Hellcat. The aircraft lurched violently. Metal tore. Smoke poured back along the fuselage. "I'm hit." Break away. But his wingman did not break away. Young, furious, and loyal, he turned straight into the attack to save his leader. He fired first, but in anger, he fired badly. His burst missed. The Japanese ace did not miss. Another stream of cannon shells struck the damaged Hellcat. The American leader's aircraft erupted, breaking apart in the sky. For one stunned second, the wingman could barely understand what he had seen. Then grief became rage. He dove after the Japanese fighter, chasing revenge instead of survival. That was his second mistake. He focused so completely on the ace in front of him that he never checked behind. The ace wingman slid into position. Gunfire tore through the American fighter from the rear. Shrapnel slashed through the cockpit. Flames curled around the canopy. The young pilot, wounded and half-blinded, fought to open it. Somehow, with burning hands and failing strength, he forced his way out and fell into the sky beneath the parachute. Below him, his Hellcat burned toward the earth. Above him, the Japanese fighters turned away and headed home, toward a defeated nation, an uncertain peace, and a future none of them understood. The pilot hanging in the parachute did not live long enough to see the ground. By then, the surviving Americans were racing back to their carrier. One by one, damaged Hellcats emerged from the sky. One pilot landed with holes punched through wings and tail. Another staggered onto the deck with an aircraft so shot up it was barely flyable. Men scrambled across the flight deck, searching the horizon for more. No more came. Out of the squadron that had launched in celebration, only a fraction returned. And so, in one final burst of violence, after the surrender order had already been given, the last dogfight of the Second World War was written in fire. It was not a grand battle. It did not decide the fate of nations. It changed nothing. That is what makes it so haunting. Peace had already arrived. The killing happened anyway. In those last savage minutes, exhausted men on both sides were no longer fighting for strategy, or victory, or even survival of their countries. They were fighting because war had shaken them too deeply to stop in a single radio call. When the guns finally fell silent, the world moved on. But for the men in that sky, the end of World War II did not come as a ceremony. It came as smoke in the sunrise, broken aircraft over Japan, and one last dogfight triggered by peace itself.